Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio. Your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Talking Heads here on USA Global TV and Radio. I'm your expert presenter today, and it's my honor and privilege to be here to talk to you about why smart people make emotionally irrational decisions. And by the way, there's no judgment in this episode. This program is just for education and awareness purposes. So first, I'd like to ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channels. We have two of them, USA Global TV and Radio and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. We get really good information from YouTube about who's watching and where in the world they're watching. And so we'd love to have you with us over there. So today I'm going to be talking about the paradox, which is just because you're intelligent or you have a high IQ doesn't mean that you do not demonstrate irrational behavior. I'm included in that as well. So we're going to talk about the difference between your IQ, your EQ, and your emotional regulation. So this program is not a personal attack about anyone or towards anyone. It's not about judgment. Again, I'm just here to bring education and awareness. So intelligence, when we think about that, that actually explains how someone can reason. It doesn't determine how they can detach themselves from the decision or from their ego. So I've talked about this many times, but we can come from a place of love and compassion and empathy and grace, or we can come from a place of fear, delusion, anxiety, and ego. And so depending on where we're coming from, that can actually frame how we make decisions and how we're coming across with those decisions. So when we think of the word irrational, meaning lacking ration, we can interpret that a number of different ways. When we look at emotionally irrational decisions, I think that can resonate a little bit more for people because we have emotions that are attached to it. And so if you've ever been in a situation where someone says, you're acting in a completely irrational manner, your behavior is totally irrational, meaning that there's a set of circumstances and that your reaction to the circumstances isn't rational. And of course, that can be filled with judgment. And so we're not talking about that today. That's a different show. What we're talking about today is how people who are very intelligent can still make emotionally irrational decisions. So if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. And again, as I always stipulate, I'm very much willing to answer questions and post comments that come from a positive place. Negativity has no place here. So thank you. So first of all, what is IQ? IQ stands for intelligence quotient. So IQ measures our cognitive ability. You may have seen some of these tests. I actually saw one on social media and I kind of fell for it. I went and I spent the 99 cents to find out what my IQ was after taking a bunch of tests. But basically what it does is it measures our logical reasoning. It also looks for patterns. So if you've ever taken an IQ test, they show you a certain number of things and you have to say, what's the thing that's going to come next? You're going to select whatever the pattern is that comes next. There's also analytical thinking. And then there's how quickly are we able to problem solve? And then, of course, the verbal and mathematical aptitude. So that's typically what is under the umbrella of IQ. And so IQ can predict how efficiently we're going to process information and solve problems that are very structured. It's basically, if you think about the engine in a car and how much horsepower is there, that's kind of, in my opinion, what IQ is. So if you think of someone who has a very high IQ, they typically possess certain attributes, which would be they're very fast thinkers, right? They think on their feet. They're strong debaters. And part of what I like about being a strong debater is you can be someone who debates every single thing. And that to me is different than a strong debater. So a strong debater to me is someone who can be presented with a topic and they can debate it with curiosity and back and forth with intelligence, as opposed to getting so emotionally attached to it that it just ends up going downhill. They're also very technically competent. And they're very confident in their reasoning. So you may question their reasoning, but they're going to stand by it because they feel very secure in their logic and their reasoning. What doesn't IQ measure? So it doesn't measure how our emotions are regulated, right? We've got high highs, we've got low lows. Sometimes we just feel nothing. We're just in the middle. It's not going to measure our self-awareness. It's not going to measure our humility or how humble we are. And it's not going to be able to detect any bias that we might have in our selections or in our opinions. So it can measure how well we think, but not how well we examine our thinking. So if that makes sense to you, that's great. Drop it into the chat. If you have any questions, let me know. Now, something that we talk about on a regular basis on this network is also emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, or EQ, that's something that we typically discuss when we talk about etiquette and manners. People who have a high EQ, they present themselves in a certain way. They're usually very curious, they're very interested, and they can hear differences of opinions without becoming completely emotionally distraught and becoming unhinged. So when we have a high level of emotional intelligence, we can actually recognize our own behavior. We can sense, okay, I feel like I'm starting to get out of control. How can I bring myself back into control? And also, they're really good at reading the room. This is something else that I talk about, especially with my listening courses, knowing your audience, seeing who feels uncomfortable, who feels comfortable, who's probably going to contribute, who might not want to contribute, being able to assess that, understanding how people process information. Some people are visual learners, some people are audio learners, some people like doing role plays, some people hate doing role plays. So being aware of not just yourself, but your audience and the people in the room. Another thing that people with high EQ is they're able to admit when they've made a mistake. They're one of the first to raise their hands and say, you know what? That was me. I own up to it. I made a mistake. They're also very open to feedback. Sometimes when you give people feedback, they just shut down. You give some constructive criticism. And by the way, whenever we give constructive, I like to say feedback, I shouldn't say criticism, constructive feedback, we ask for permission. Would you be open to me sharing XYZ? Or how would you feel if I shared XYZ? We don't just launch into it. In fact, I just had someone do this to me the other day. They said, would you mind if I gave you some professional feedback? And I said, I would mind, and I don't want it. And they said, well, I'm going to give it to you anyway. So that to me is not a high EQ individual. That's just someone who wants to get their point across. And they're also really skilled at managing conflict. I've talked about this before about jumping into the fire. So if you've ever gone on a hike, or if you've ever been on a reality TV show or Survivor, et cetera, you've watched it, usually someone has to start a fire. And so you need certain things to be able to start the fire, and you need certain things to be able to have the fire continue to build and to grow. Or you can choose not to build a fire, not to maintain the fire, and maybe not even to go into the woods. So there's a certain skill set that high EQ individuals have when it comes to managing conflict. So today we're talking about why smart people make emotionally irrational decisions. And the tension really lies in between that gap between IQ and EQ. So high IQ without a developed high EQ usually creates a very predictable pattern. What is that? A person with a high IQ can build very sophisticated arguments to defend weak positions. So, in other words, if you have a high IQ and you're having a conversation with someone who's maybe not have a high IQ, and by the way, how do we assess this and how do we judge? We basically can tell if someone's on the same playing field as we are, meaning they seem open to conversation, they seem open to debate, they're open to feedback, a lot of the things that we just shared. So this isn't just making a judgment. This is you being able to assess when you're with another person. Are they self-aware? Are they adaptable? Are they willing to admit mistakes? Are they open to feedback, etc.? And so when we are highly intelligent, we can choose to put together a defense of something that might not even make sense, but the other person can't understand it. So we're coming up with very sophisticated arguments to defend very weak positions. Okay, the next thing is the person with the biggest ego sometimes is considered to be the smart one. And I just have been watching a show called Traders. I don't know if you're familiar with this show, but it's a reality TV show. And one of the participants talks a lot and is very verbal and is very outspoken. And so that intimidates some people. And I think in this particular instance, I think that this person's using it as gameplay, but I'm not sure. But people can use this as gameplay in life, right? If I overtalk you, if I outtalk you, then I could be perceived as being more intelligent because I just have so much to say. Meanwhile, what it does is sometimes it drives the other person backwards and they're sort of in a weaker position in their own mind because this person has stepped up based on their ego to be able to overtalk you. And to me, and I'm not talking about the particular TV show, but when I've witnessed this in real life, to me, that doesn't come across as a high IQ, that comes across as a bully. And bully can be a judgmental term, but we all know what bullying behavior is. So that's not what we're talking about today. However, when we make emotionally irrational decisions, we can be perceived as coming from lower vibrations, as being perceived as coming across with negative energy. So that's not something that I want to do. We all have a choice. You can choose if that's how you want to show up. So the whole point of this episode, again, is to bring education and awareness. It is not to judge anyone for how they're showing up or how they're not showing up. So we also can come across with emotional threats. So when we're emotionally threatening someone, that is defying logic. So we could come across and say something intentionally to hurt someone, which could be, there's no way you're going to make it without me. Putting that fear into the person. If you don't do this, I'm going to leave you. If you don't do this, you're going to be fired. If you don't do this, you're not going to fit in and we're going to have to cancel your membership. There's all different ways that we can use our emotions to create an uncomfortableness. So even though we could be highly intelligent, we know how to play the game, so to speak. We know how to make other people feel uncomfortable. And when I say we, I mean the collective we. So using intelligence for that means of decision making is not something that I advocate for. Because when we are gifted with a high IQ and or a high EQ, to me, that truly is a present. And so how we show up with that, if we're going to use that to make other people feel uncomfortable, or we're going to use that to manipulate other people, then that's not something that I advocate for. So when our reputation or status or identity is challenged, what happens is our emotional brain starts to activate. And then our IQ starts to work to defend our ego instead of discovering what the truth is. So I've talked many times, and I'm sure you've heard other people talk about the 5 whys. Sometimes I think there can be 7, 8, 9, 10 whys. And basically, we're showing up a certain way. Why? Then we come up with an answer. Why? And by the time we get down to 5, 6, 7, 8 whys, we typically have the core of what the issue is. So knowing that you have a high IQ, if you've been tested and you know you have a high IQ, or you don't have to be tested, it just has demonstrated throughout your life, but you have a low EQ, you may be able to out debate someone, but you may lose perspective. And I think perspective is really important. So our IQ can explain how we can put together an argument about something. And our EQ will determine whether or not we're willing to revise it. So I want you to think about a blueprint that an architect has put together to design a home. And imagine you have the blueprint in front of you, or it's on your screen and you're looking at it, and everything looks like the house has a good, strong foundation, but there's a few things you want to change about it. And you go to the architect and you say, you know what, you did a great job, but I want to change a few things. And the architect gets offended and says, what do you mean? This is what I do for a living. You can't tell me what to do. I know what to do. And I know that this is the way that it should be. And then we start to get defensive. This is an example that I want you to think about in day-to-day life, because even though we don't specifically have a blueprint for our life and we don't have a blueprint for our relationships, there is a blueprint, and it's evolving because life is filled with changes and opportunities. And if we are not willing to revise the blueprint, then we might be losing out. So in the example I just gave, which I just came up with, the architect may say, you know what, this is the way I'm building the house. And if you don't like it, you can go find another architect. And another example, which this has happened to me, it might have happened to you, you go out for dinner or lunch and you look at the menu and you want to make some changes because you have food allergies or you just have to tweak something that's on the menu. And the server says to you, I'm really sorry, but chef will not allow any changes. Then the chef comes out and says, why would you want to change my dish? This is an award-winning dish. This is the way we serve the dish. If you don't like this dish, then you can leave. Now, the chef has every right to do that, and you may choose to leave. It's the same thing in a relationship, except we have choices because we're not all of us award-winning chefs, and we're not all architects, but we are the architect of our own blueprint. So we may have to refine that blueprint. We may have to refine that recipe. We may have to refine whatever it is if we want to have cohesiveness and peace. But that's not always our goal. For some of us, our goal is to be right. We want to be right regardless. So no matter how much IQ we have or how much EQ we have, usually the EQ and what I'm talking about are not going to go together. We want to be right. For every conversation, we're the winner. I won that conversation. I showed her. I showed him. And the other person is completely beaten down, maybe sometimes in tears, but we're the victor because we won. Now, to me, that's not winning. To me, that's not, I feel great about this. I feel good about the way that it went. But some people do feel that way. So we can use our intelligence to manipulate conversations, to manipulate resolutions, because we're able to outthink the other person or the situation. And by the time they catch up, we've already won. But what is winning? What is winning? Each of us have our own opinion about it. To me, winning is having peace, is being able to sleep at night, is being able to have calm conversations with other people who have completely different opinions than I do. I call that curiosity. And I think when you travel the world and you see how other people live, it's really interesting. I think it's fantastic. Even in the United States of America, different parts of this country, you can go different places and people live different lives. Now, when you encounter someone who has not traveled the world, they might only see things through their own eyes. And that's that example of the architect with the blueprint. They see it as the blueprint of where they live or how they were raised. They can't imagine it being any other way. And so we have a choice, and the choice is that we accept how that person sees things or we don't. And we have a choice of when we don't, how we show up. Are we going to judge them? Are we going to label them? Are we going to make them feel bad and say things that are negative? Or are we just going to be quiet? I think the real joy is in finding peace. And for each and every one of you who are out there, how many of you are living a peaceful life? Now, when I say peaceful life, does that mean necessarily that you're a monk? Does that mean that you are living in isolation? Does that mean you're staring at a wall? No, of course not. It doesn't mean any of those things. What it means is that in here, you are at peace. You are happy with yourself. Maybe you're on your own journey. Maybe you're still designing your own blueprint, but you feel peaceful. You don't feel a sense of anxiety. You don't feel a sense of, wow, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm at a complete loss. You're on a journey. And during the journey, you're going to learn certain things. And so think about how you're using your intelligence. We have some of the most intelligent people in the world running our world, and they make mistakes. They make mistakes. Sometimes they're not using their own emotional intelligence. Sometimes they're listening to others. And even on social media, it amazes me what garners so much attention is the negativity. People love negativity. I personally don't. I don't succumb to any of those things. I don't comment on any of those things. But yet, highly intelligent people are commenting on things on social media that are of the lowest vibration whatsoever, and they just keep perpetuating it. So there's a story that might have been out years ago, and they continue to perpetuate the story today. You have to ask yourself why. Why are you spending your time doing this instead of helping others? If there's a situation where people were harmed, why aren't you helping them? Why aren't you reaching out to them? Why aren't you giving back instead of spending your time promoting negativity? So whatever your intelligence level is, I would ask you to give grace, to show up with compassion, and to be kind to other people, and not use your intelligence as a tool to put others down or to outmaneuver others. You know, if you've ever been involved with negotiations, and to me, everything in life is a negotiation, some people will use their intelligence to outsmart someone else. And I love a good comeback when they've underestimated the person they're dealing with and the person actually outsmarts them. But to me, outsmarting someone really means showing up with kindness and showing up with integrity and doing what you say you're going to do. Today, I'm doing 5 TV shows in a row, which, let me tell you, is a lot of work. Wardrobe changes in between, and then changing my headspace for whatever the topic is. So why am I doing it? Because I said I was going to do it. And so to me, that means a lot. It might not mean a lot to you. You might just drop in and watch 5 seconds of the show. But to me, I have television shows and I'm committed to showing up. And so I do. Now, I could use this space as a way of manipulating people, right? If you're following me and I'm a public figure, I'm an influencer, but that's not my goal. That's not my dream. That's not what I'm about. What I'm about is peace. That is what I promote, is peace. And so I hope if you are following me, or if you're new to following me, that you are someone who wants to live a peaceful life. Maybe you're not living it right now, but that is your goal. You are working towards it. So using our intelligence for good, using our emotional intelligence to show up, to show other people that we care, that we give grace, that we understand that sometimes people misspeak, people make mistakes, and giving them grace. And so there are horrible things that happen to people. And if you've ever watched a courtroom situation where there's someone on trial who has murdered someone's family or whatever the case may be, and you see the family members who are left and they forgive the person. And people go, I don't understand. How could they possibly do that? This person did X, Y, and Z to their family. Because they're giving the person grace in the most horrific of situations. And by doing that, they're giving themselves grace. They're forgiving, but they're not forgetting. So that's what I ask of you, to use your intelligence in a peaceful way to help others, to lift one another up, to make the best decisions for yourself, decisions that are not emotionally irrational, that you actually think about from a logical perspective. Well, how am I going to feel after I make this decision? So think about these things. And if there's something that I can do to help you, you can reach out to me. I think I have my contact details in the notes, but if you don't have it, let me see. I do have it here. I'll bring it up. So you can contact me on my websites, usaglobaltv.com and drjacalyn.com, or you can email me at drjacalyn@usaglobaltv.com. And before we go, I do want to share the fact that I have 3 new books coming out. And the first one is Stop Giving Away Your Value, Boundaries, Pricing, and the Business of Respect. This is available as an ebook right now. The paperback and the hardback will be coming out. I think it's in April. And the reason why I've written this book is because each of us can find a time in our life when we just sold ourselves out. We just gave away ourselves for free. And I've noticed this as a business owner, that in terms of me wanting to help so many people and me wanting people to find peace, many times I've undervalued myself. But the truth is, we all have bills that have to be paid, right? And certain entities that we might pay bills to, they don't want to hear excuses. They just want the payment. So we as entrepreneurs, we have the right to declare a certain value. And even if you're not in business, if you are a housewife or a house husband, or you're a parent or a caregiver, you have value, and you might just be giving away all your value to your own detriment, to the point where you're completely exhausted and you don't even know if what you're doing anymore has any value. So this book is for you. My next book is My Tummy Hurts, A Kid's Guide to Belly Aches and Bathroom Troubles. So this is a story of a little girl named Jackie, that would be me, who was diagnosed with ulcerative colitis. And so my goal in writing this book is to help parents, children, caregivers to understand what it is that goes on with our bodies when we have something like ulcerative colitis, so that it's not something that we're ashamed to talk about. And I'll be doing a book signing for My Tummy Hurts on May 16th, 2026 at Citizens Bank Park in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in the United States of America, at the Take Steps Walk, sponsored by the Crohn's and Colitis Foundation. And my next book is Lady Ella and Lord Jack. They're back. They just finished their Kindness Adventures in book 1. And now they're with the Alley Cats of Greece. And they're going to be listening to their new friends, who are the Alley Cats. So I recently had the privilege of being in Saronida, Greece. And I noticed that there were alley cats. There were cats everywhere. And so I wanted to write a story to honor the cats, because they have a pretty tough life. They are being fed, but in some cases, there's so many cats that they're not getting enough food, and they might not be getting enough love. And they are living in dumpsters and in alleys. And so Lady Ella and Lord Jack fly in, and then they talk to them and they give them some love and kindness. So you can get all 3 of these books over on Amazon. All you have to do is put in my name, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, which you can see right here. Okay, I'm going to be signing off and coming back with my next episode, which is What You Never Learned in School. And we'll be exploring another interesting topic there. I'll be back with Talking Heads next week. We'll see you soon. Over to our sponsors. Bye for now. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor, teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book, Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to TracyCramPerkins.com. Tracy Cram Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
In a noisy world, true connection begins with listening. Elevated listening transforms every conversation in just 5 simple steps. Pause and breathe. Set your intention. Listen with curiosity. Reflect back. Agree on one next step. Join the Listening Mentor on Let's Finally Talk with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, the Listening Mentor, where we help you find inner peace, one conversation at a time. Streaming every day. Let's Finally Talk TV show with Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, only here on USA Global TV and Radio. Subscribe to our YouTube channels to watch and engage with all our content.
Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now. Listen, babe, now, listen, babe, now.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.